All right, and Mark, you can take it away.
Okay, well, thank you all. Very nice meeting all of you. I know I've met some of you before. My name is Mark Schnapper. I'm in the Transportation Planning Department in TESS for the City of Alexandria. And my role as of January of 2020 is the Bus Rapid Transit Program Coordinator. So my job is to actually implement 3 different BRT corridor projects that were identified by the city quite a while ago, actually. So we're really excited to kick off the 3rd of the 3 corridors, and that's the Duke Street BRT. I'm going to share a quick presentation with you. Just for those that you are still on camera, raise your hands if you've already seen the webinar that we presented a couple weeks ago, or maybe even the board meeting that I did for Dash also a couple weeks ago. Okay, so seeing a lot of you have, but there's several that have not seen this presentation. This is a much shorter version of the webinar. I know you have a full schedule. I will try to go through it quickly, but I will save plenty of time at the end to answer some questions for those of you that are new to the project. And if you can confirm that you see my screen.
You can see your screen.
Yes,
beautiful. All right. So Duke Street Motion, as I mentioned, is the 3rd of 3 BRT corridors. There's the Metroway in Route 1, of course, that opened up in 2014. There's the West End Transitway that we've been working on planning for that for several years, and we are just moving into the design phase. And then the Duke Street project, which is the 3rd of the 3 corridors, and other than some very conceptual level plans that were done quite a while ago, has not really progressed too much further. So unfortunately for Ross, I probably don't have a good answer for your question, but I will try to address it when we get to the end here. So all 3 corridors were first put into plan in 2008 with the Master Transportation Plan. It was very high level. It was basically big fat markers on the map that identified more or less where the corridors are going to be that we want to put high capacity, higher speed transit services along our main transit corridors. On the 2012 transit corridor feasibility study, expanded on that, got into a little bit more detail, got into specifics about is there going to be dedicated lanes in certain sections of the corridor, where the stops possibly could be located, what other amenities could be part of the project. And now related to the Duke Street project, that's really where the planning has ended for that, and the focus has been on the other 2 corridors. In the meantime, though, we did apply for grant money, which is the way we have to do that in the area. We apply for grants long before we actually have received the money to be able to spend that and do the actual planning, design, and construction of the project. So we won our first grant in 2012, and that is why they brought me in on the project, because we couldn't even touch that money until fiscal year 2020. In the meantime, we also applied for an additional grant to help us get through construction, and we were very fortunate. We, the city, were very fortunate to get $75 million additional dollars of Northern Virginia Transportation Authority grant money in the 6-year transportation plan that will likely get us through the construction of whatever the project looks like. And when I say whatever the project looks like, that's because as we took a look at the plan that was put together in 2012, we thought this really needs a refresher. This probably doesn't reflect the values that we have today for what the corridor needs to look like. So we're really going back to the drawing board. So the big yellow screen, the big yellow circle at the top tells you the next phases of the project. And we're starting off with this Duke Street in Motion. That's the brand we came up with this, so people can kind of identify with it when they see different signs along the corridor or different things on the internet. They'll know, oh yeah, that's that Duke Street project I heard about last summer. We're starting that, and that's just an information gathering, trying to find about, and I'll get into more details of what that phase is. Then the next steps are to start developing or refining, I guess, the 2012 alternative. But really, like I said, we're starting from scratch and developing different alternatives for the physical improvements that we can make on the corridor, as well as access improvements and service improvements for the corridor. The next phase would then go into design and also environmental analysis, which will look at things like traffic impacts, possible ridership projections, travel times by bus, by transit, of how how much faster it could go with whatever improvements that we come to an agreement on. And then finally, the fun part about my job is when we get into the construction. The real fun part is when we open up for service. But that's the game plan for now, next 4 or 5 years. So we're in phase 1, and that's the community visioning portion. We're trying to reflect the needs of the entire corridor, the entire Duke Street community. So that means drivers, that means transit riders, people that walk or bike along the corridor or would like to walk and bike along the corridor, but they don't feel safe today. Apartment renters, homeowners, condo owners, business owners, everybody along the corridor, the folks that even use it to drive through the community. These are all users of the corridor. This is a major public arterial through our community. So we want to try to see what's important to all those members of the community. And as I mentioned, then we're going to jump into the alternatives phase for phase 2. And then we're really trying to ensure that we have inclusion of groups that aren't necessarily heard from in a lot of projects. A lot of times the old way we did it before COVID, we would have a big public meeting in the library or some other public building, and people would stand up and speak their mind on the microphone, and people that weren't very comfortable talking in public or anything like that might not get their say in there, and that's not really the best way of getting additional input. So we are utilizing some additional strategies, and the Duke Street in Motion Week that we just kicked off was the beginning of that. I'm going to have to press pause really quick. Paula, please turn down that volume. Sorry, guys. Okay, phase 1 is, again, we're looking for the values of the community in this phase, and that's going to translate then into the visions and goals of the project. We want to build trust. We know that we have a lot of trust issues out in the community, and we're trying to understand what the concerns are up front. We want to gather the input related to just overall visions and goals before we start talking specific about what the physical improvements would be on the corridor. So we kicked off Duke Street in Motion Week 2 weeks ago, and this is a little hindsight here now, just because of the schedules. But we went out to bus stops and we did interviews at all these different locations. 19 different events were held over an 8-day period at bus stops, grocery stores, public parks and dog parks, set up tents at apartments and condo complexes throughout the corridor. Even went to laundromats to try to get folks that don't necessarily usually participate in these type of events. And all this information is posted on the website, and we're working on putting the feedback that we got from that. We're working on that right now to post that feedback. We also had a survey that's still ongoing through July 31st. So if you have not had the opportunity to fill that out, please go to our project website and complete the feedback form, and encourage your friends and neighbors to do that as well. So when I said we're going back to the drawing board for the project, there's a lot of things that are on and off the table, and things that we already know about as well, and I'll get to that. So things that are off the table, or what are givens with this project, is the corridor location and the boundaries of it. It's going to be on Duke Street. We're not deviating off of Duke Street from Landmark Mall to the King Street Metro Station. Bus transit is a primary component for a lot of reasons. First, that's implementing the 2008 and 2012 plans that were adopted by council, but also that's why we were able to secure the grant funding that we have to pay for this project. That was very specific in our scoring, was primarily a transit focused project. However, bike, pedestrian, and vehicular improvements can be made as long as there's some type of nexus or relation to the transit component of the project. What's up for consideration is pretty much everything else, including, are we going to have dedicated transit lanes? And if so, is it going to be the entire corridor? Is it going to be 24/7, or is it just going to be during the peak hour? And it might be just portions of the corridor. Are we going to remove or keep the service roads? That's a very big issue that we've heard a lot during this first few weeks, and one that we knew of going into it. Where are the stations going to be located? Right now, the AT8 runs and stops pretty much every 2 blocks or so through much of the corridor. Is a BRT, which it is, the R in BRT is rapid. Is it going to have fewer stops? We're still working on. That's going to be part of what we develop with this. even who is the operator. The WMATA currently runs the Metroway on Route 1. That goes into two different jurisdictions. This corridor will just be one. So Dash may actually be the operator for this, but it could be WMATA or it could be some other entity that may be formed between now and then. If and where there's going to be bike lanes, trail widenings, sidewalk improvements, what's the landscape going to look like? Even what are we going to do with utilities that we might have to relocate for these facilities? Do we put them underground, and do we pay the cost for that? And anything else that might come up that we've been hearing about for the last few weeks and we'll continue to hear about. As I said, we know a lot of issues that we knew going into the project. Congestion is a major issue, especially at eastbound during the evening peak hour at West Taylor Run and Telegraph Road intersection. And we do have a separate project that's about ready to kick off in our department that's going to be specifically looking at that particular choke point along the corridor. We also know there's a lot of concerns about cut-through traffic, especially on West Taylor Run and Quaker Lane and other through roads that can link up to Seminary and areas beyond. Parking on the frontage roads, or the service roads, if you want to call it that. That's a major issue for a lot of these neighborhoods. That's the only parking area for a second car. A lot of the neighborhoods have only a one-car driveway. A lot of them were built in the 50s and 60s. And we know there's a poor bike and pedestrian experience, both going along the corridor and across the corridor. And that's critical for bus passengers as well, because typically you might have a bus stop right in front of your house on your morning commute, but on your evening commute, you're going to have to cross Duke Street. And we know that's not a pleasant experience for anybody. So what's the next steps? And this is what we're transitioning into right now is small group discussions. And I anticipate, hopefully we will create a small group of bus riders as one of the several small groups that our consultant team that we hired to help us through the civic engagement process is going to put together. I don't know if we need the whole committee, but if I will reach out to your chair once we actually have the format of this set up and see if we can get some folks to volunteer to participate in that. We're also going to have additional stakeholder group outreach. That's for more of the established stakeholder groups, like the civic associations, church groups, things like that. Then we're going to develop the conceptual plans, and it might have alternatives involved in that, and bring that back out to the public for a lot of further discussion. We'll revise a plan and hopefully come up with a concept plan that is agreed upon by the majority of the public, as well as our city council, amending their 2012 plan. So this is not going to be a short process. It's going to be about 12 to 18 months, and we just kicked off 2 weeks ago. So this is a good time for me to introduce myself and introduce the project to this group. But we have a long way to go on this, and I look forward to working with you all. So that is the very quick version. If you want to see the webinar, which was I thought it went really well, despite a couple technical difficulties. We got through those, and it was about a 40-minute presentation or so with another great 50 or so minute question and answer session that we had from over 100 participants watching the webinar live that night. The webinar is available on the website. As you can see here, we made it easy, so you don't have a whole bunch of letters and numbers to type in. It's just alexandriava.gov/DukeInMotion. So that concludes my prepared presentation, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Committee members, questions, concerns, comments?
Hey, Mark, this is Yvette. I have two quick questions. So I live on Duke Street and I take ATA a lot. So previously I remember, so if I go to the bus stop, there will be like a digital signage that updates what's the next bus or what's the second next bus. It's like 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away. And I don't see it recently. And I wonder if you have insights on that. And the second question.
Okay.
Yeah, second question is, I don't know if there's any measures in place for, the forecast, the bus actually arriving prior to the forecasted time. I don't know if there's any measures to do that. Thank you.
Any measures? Let me clarify. Can you clarify that second question?
Yeah, if there is a more accurate way to tell when the bus is actually coming.
Okay. So to answer your first question, Martin might step in, Martin or Ray might step in and correct me, but I know we were trying some newer technology. WMATA had actually started pushing some of those things. There were some of the smaller boards that you saw and then also some more digital real-time information. One of the things that, and those were kind of experimental for our system. One of the things that, if you've ever ridden the Metroway, they have more robust real-time bus information. That's the signs that's on the that's actually on the stations, and that will most likely be part of the new stations that come up with that we come up with for the BRT portion
Hey,
of the
Mark.
So
Mark.
Mark, yeah, let me let Gabriel Maury is actually on the call. He's our Intelligent Transportation
There we
Systems
go.
Coordinator. And he actually is the one who puts up most of those digital signs, Yvette, that you were just mentioning. So I'm gonna let him hop in here.
Got the
Yeah, let me turn my my camera on really fast. Sorry about that. I'm not supposed to present until later tonight. Hello, I'm Gabriel Moria, Intelligent Transportation Systems Coordinator and frequent rider of the AT5, 6, and 8. So if I share those buses with anyone, apologies if the operators ever start talking to me during the trip and ruin the quiet. So may I ask you, Yvette, what stop are you at on Duke? That would give me a.
I am at Duke and South Ingram.
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry about that one. It was vandalized quite a while ago, and it has been on my to-do list to replace it for a while. We've had some shortages of signs and then shortages of manpower, actually person power, to put them up. I actually just scheduled with our recently hired ITS technician, though, to do that stop in particular. I'm not even joking, next Wednesday, the 14th. So that one in particular is going to go back up very soon. We have about 10 more signs from WMATA. We share them with them. We have a kind of informal memorandum of understanding that any digital sign in the city of Alexandria is jointly shared between the two of us. So of the 50 or so solar powered signs we have in the city, 30 of them are owned by Dash, 20 of them by WMATA, but Dash manages all of them. So I have about 10 more from them that we need to get deployed around that we've been holding off at doing because there's been some questions about 3G not being supported anymore. So we haven't wanted to put up a bunch of signs that might not be supported by the networks that they're running, off of cellular data. But I'm happy to kind of talk to you offline if you want to about any particular sign concerns. As for the Duke Street Transitway, I think Mark, said it absolutely correctly that we're not sure what type of sign we want to use yet. I know WMATA has their preference for the scrolling LED signs. Personally, I find them a little bit harder to use than the e-ink signs that we, like the one that we had at Duke and Ingram and the ones we have at Duke and Jordan. It's, a bit of a trade-off of visibility, nighttime readability, and then the amount of information that you can fit on the sign. That and that the scrolling LED signs tend to take an actual power outlet to hook up, whereas the e-ink signs you can kind of put anywhere as long as you have sun. So I know that's something that I'm hoping to be involved in as part of the Duke Street in Motion process as we get there, is to lend whatever, I don't know if I'd call it expertise, but maybe informed opinion on what type of sign might serve that corridor best.
Thanks,
Can you
Gabriel.
address your second question about the next bus information? I know that's on the new app, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say that it could be better at predicting early buses, do you mean that you frequently find that your buses are arriving before they're supposed to?
Yeah, I've counted it a few times. Like there's 3-4 minutes ahead of time, and I just watch the bus, driving by.
That's interesting because you're right before, we call them time, I think they're called time stops, and Duke and Jordan, if you're heading eastbound, if you ever notice, the bus will actually wait there sometimes without any passengers getting on board or off board, and that's specifically because that's the designated stop for the bus to, and we've seen it a lot more during COVID with traffic being a lot less, that the buses are running ahead of schedule. So you're only one stop away from that time stop. So that's, I think Martin's probably taking a note right now, and we'll probably talk to the operators just to make sure we're utilizing those time schedules. So that is, an early bus is almost as bad, if not worse, than a late bus.
Right.
When you're riding transit. And Yvette, it's nice to meet you because you must be a neighbor of mine, because that's my bus stop as well.
It's good to know. Yeah, I'm glad that we're on top of these issues.
Wait, are you the one connected to me in my duplex here? Are you on the other side?
I don't know.
That would be really bad.
Hey, Yvette, if it isn't too much to ask, I'm going to drop my email in the chat next time it
Okay.
happens. If you could send me a screenshot of it, I'll send it to our tracker
Okay.
because they
Perfect.
should be able to handle early arrivals. That shouldn't be an issue on it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well,
for
this is
Mark?
for Joy Scott Resto. I don't have a question, but I'm a dash rider. I take the AT1, AT5, AT7, AT8 regularly. And I think that the system overall is fantastic. I mean, I'm from New York City, public transportation central. And I think that the system here is far exceed in terms of timeliness, that in New York City, that you have a schedule. I mean, I've taken the bus regularly for 3.5 years to and from work. I don't drive. I know how to drive, but I don't. I'm a big proponent of public transportation. But I don't have a question, but I wanted to volunteer, Mark, to be in the small group that you mentioned. I would definitely like that. But just want to say the system, I think it's phenomenal. The AT1 plus now comes more frequently. I take the 7 or 8 from Duke and Ripley. That's where I live. I live off Duke. To Landmark to switch to the AT1. Sometimes I just walk to Duke and Walker to take the AT1. When I come home, sometimes I get off at Duke and Walker and just walk home from there, as opposed to going to Landmark and switching to a 5-7 or 25B or AT8. But overall, I think the system is phenomenal. I'm very impressed by it. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very
so
much.
Joy Scott.
I'm sure the Dash staff appreciates that, and we're still working to make it even better. We got some fun changes coming up for you. I'm sure you've already heard some of them, but
Yes.
it's an exciting couple of years here.
Mhm.
All right, well, Mark, clearly we're going to have more opportunities to circle back to you and your
Absolutely.
colleagues on this topic. So I want to thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your presentation to this group. Everybody knows how to get a hold of you. And you've have the link for the full webinar that Mark has given, which is an excellent one. And I encourage members of this committee, if they have some time and interest, to look at the longer webinar where you'll learn more details.
Yeah, Ross, can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Jim.
Mark, do you have any sense for how well you've been able to reach the hard to reach communities, the people in apartments, the condos, the lower income people? I heard in one of your presentations you'd reached over 1,000 people in the first week, and that kind of scares me because that's a phenomenal number for a week of any city project, which tells me it may just be the usual loud voices. So.
Yeah, we're up to 1,300 people that filled out. It's not a survey; it's called a feedback form, because it's not scientific. But we had 1,300 people so far sign up for that or fill it out. Almost 300 of those were actually at our 19 pop-up events, so that's a good number of those. And also a similar number, just coincidental, but 300 of those were actually Spanish, filled out in Spanish. So that's one demographic we don't hear a lot from very often. So because of the effort we've done, I think we're getting more than just, I think we're diversifying it more. It's still not as good as we want. So my consultant team is going to go out and do a few more pop-up events in some places that we still have low responses. Younger age group is one that's actually very low right now. That was one of the biggest, lower age and very senior, like 75, not, if somebody's over 75, I'm not trying to be offensive, but yeah, like this disabled and not still active, not as active seniors. That's definitely not the PC way of saying it, but I think you all know what I'm trying to say. So we're following up with our initial week of events to try to reach out to those things. Like one of the places they're going to go to is the skate park and try to get some of the kids over there at the skate park. So
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Last call for questions, comments. Okay, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Very nice
Appreciate
meeting you. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. So our next presentation is going to be on the Dash Fare Free framework. As most of you know, if not all of you, the City Council voted to adopt a fare free strategy for the Dash system starting in September. A lot of these details are still being worked out, and this is a very timely opportunity for us to hear from Evan Davis, who's been working on the Dash Fare Free framework with the Board of Directors, and for this committee to offer its opinions on where we are on this, how it's going to roll out, impact, etc. So Whitney, is Evan with us?
Hi. Yes, I am. Good evening.
Here we are. Good. Good evening. Thank you. Take it away, Evan.
Sure thing. And again, I'll just echo everyone else. The thanks to all of you for giving your time and input to be on this committee. I live in the district, and so in addition to taking Metro, I don't drive a car. I'm a frequent AT8 rider, so may see some of you all on that bus. So Ross, you've really actually said a lot of the key things, and I'm just going to flesh that out a little bit with where we are and just leave maximum time for what you're interested in the form of questions. So this, has been discussed over the years. We've received budget questions, which is what the city council members have to submit for them to then follow that up with an add delete budget amendment in the spring of any year when the city budget is being finalized and adopted. And so Mayor Wilson did submit a budget question on this topic last spring, which became an add delete proposal. And so the concrete action that was taken by City Council was to increase the subsidy to Dash by the amount necessary to eliminate passenger revenue for 10 months of fiscal year 2022. And that's because, as Ross mentioned, we're going fare free in September to coincide with the launch of the new Dash network, our total network redesign, which I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about. And then in June, our board of directors adopted a preliminary, what we're calling a fare free framework that kind of goes over some of the policy for this program. And we'll make sure that you all have copies of that if you don't already. It's also available on our website in our June board of directors materials within that packet. But it does a few things. It lays out the goals, which I think consistent with Mayor Wilson's proposal is, first of all, to reduce the barriers to transit for people who may have lower incomes or be among the more vulnerable members of our community for whatever reason. Certainly to increase transit usage in general, and particularly as we recover from the pandemic, and to drive that increased awareness of Dash and ridership of Dash when we have this much better service in the new Dash network launching at the same time. As many of you are probably also aware, eliminating fare collection can help our service by reducing average dwell time, and keeping the bus moving, that we're not waiting to collect everybody's fare when they get on board. The funding that has been provided is just short of 1.5 million in increased subsidy to Dash. Normally, Dash makes about 4 million a year in passenger revenue. The reason it's lower is because we had already planned on receiving a lot less revenue last year in this coming fiscal year due to the lingering effects of the pandemic and slower return to transit, and also because we still have some of the relief money from both the CARES Act and the second major relief bill, which is called CRISA, which is part of our budget in fiscal 22. A big other source of funding for this program potentially is what's called TRIP, that the Virginia General Assembly created about a year ago, the Transit Ridership Incentive Program. And it has two components, one of which is related to increasing regional transit routes, which may be pursued in the region, but the other big part of it is to subsidize low or no fare programs across the Commonwealth. And there are systems from Richmond to Charlottesville, Hampton Roads, and Alexandria that are all interested in this. We're really at the cutting edge. We do not have the finalized application guidance or materials yet. We expect that from the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, or DRPT, any week now. And then once that material is finalized, the city and Dash staff are going to work together to put forward an application. What we have seen from the materials is that with the criteria that we've seen to date, as we think our program is going to be very competitive. We have a strategy in place, we're launching it, it's going to benefit a whole lot of people. We have measures in place to do our best to measure the ridership impact. We have conducted a consultant-led study, actually funded by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments that estimates the ridership increase for several years going out, not only for a zero fare scenario, but also for more targeted scenarios, like if we were only going to eliminate fares for those under the poverty line, for example. That study was commissioned before the mayor put his proposal forward. So, we're launching with a totally zero fare program, but having that study in place certainly helps us with our application with the state for this potential grant. So that's going on in the background as well. We have forecasted out the amount of passenger revenue that we think we're going to earn in fiscal 23, 24, 25. And, those numbers are higher, 5 million and more, because we expected ridership to return and to even exceed what we've done in the past because of the new Dash network and the much more frequent service that we're going to have out there. And I just raised that point simply to say that the opportunity cost financially increases in future years. And that's something that our policymakers certainly have to take into account in developing the budget. So looking forward, we have a working assumption that this program, we only know for sure, this program's only been funded through June of 2022, right? The coming budget. We are working under the assumption that the program will continue for longer than that. If we're going to be told differently, it would be through the budget process, but we're preparing our next year's budget assuming no fares. And by next year, I mean fiscal 23, and that budget process is already starting. Ultimately, of course, it will be up to the city council. First the city manager to determine whether or not he or his successor, since Mr. Jinks is retiring this year, will be proposing a budget that provides for continued free fares on Dash. And then city council will have its opportunity to weigh in on that. And then the board of directors really has to then set fares based on what were funded by city council. I certainly can't read the tea leaves or provide any, further indication of the way it might go other than that. But I would say that the state is encouraging programs through the initial guidance we've seen with the TRIP program. They would prefer localities to try this for like 4 years minimum. So I think that could be influential in directing the way that this goes. But again, it's up to our policymakers, and we will see what direction they want to take us. The only other thing I'll mention is, we are keeping all of our fare collection equipment in place for the time being until we get more long-term guidance as to where this program will go. And once we do, we may do things like take fare boxes off of buses. For the moment, we still need them to collect ridership, but we're in the process. Gabriel is leading this process of installing newer and more accurate automated passenger counters on all of our buses, which will help us collect the ridership data that we need without necessarily either having a fare transaction or using the fare box to count each rider that comes on board. So I know I've spoken very quickly and said a lot, but I just wanted to cover it at a high level, and I'm really happy to answer your questions.
So Evan, could you just start off by telling us what the council believes is the metrics for success for this program? And also from the perspective of the Dash Board of Directors and staff, what you consider to be the metrics of success, recognizing that they may not be the same as with council.
I would not dare to speak for council. They haven't given us a lot of explicit guidance in that sense. However, the study that we commissioned estimated, I believe, a 26% increase in ridership solely due to a zero fare program. We would take into account also increased ridership from the new Dash network. So I think we're looking for an increase in ridership. We're looking for a quicker return, first of all, to pre-COVID ridership following the pandemic, and then for ridership to move beyond that. We're looking, I might ask Martin Barn, our planning director, to jump in here as well. I think we would be looking for increased utilization among those who are lower income. That's harder to track. That would likely require some kind of very detailed ridership survey, which may be something that we need to do, to evaluate this program. But I think ridership above all is probably what we're looking at to evaluate this.
Yeah, I can just jump in. Hi, everybody. Martin Barn, Director of Planning and Marketing for Dash. Evan, I think, did a perfect job of kind of encapsulating what we're going to be looking at. Ridership is being the main one, but then also some of these a little more qualitative factors about customer satisfaction, doing some surveys to see what people think, if they're if it's making a difference in their lives. We're having free fares, especially for those that, like Evan mentioned, are coming from lower incomes or other backgrounds like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be ridership and customer satisfaction will be two of the main ones. And then also, I think from our perspective, any sort of savings that we can incur from our operating costs in terms of staff time, fare collection equipment, like Evan mentioned, but being able to kind of save a little bit on our bottom line. Even if we're not getting the passenger revenues, we can still recoup some things by not having to collect fares.
Yeah, and runtime, speeding up the buses, improving customer experience is huge. As Martin kind of alluded to, so you may be aware, Metro is actually upgrading their entire fare box system across the whole network. That's going to cost us about $4 million to do that for our whole fleet. So to not have to make that capital investment would be a big savings.
Other comments, please.
Yeah, this is Murat. I have a quick question regarding the need. Like, was there a needs assessment for this? Like, was there a lot of demand for fare-free transit from the users, from the travelers?
Thank you for the question. That was one of the things that I think the study looked at. Ultimately, this was put forward by the mayor in the budget process. It had come up over the years. Different people had put it forward as a proposal. Martin, I'm thinking back to the study we did in the kind of the height of the pandemic. It was a very basic ridership survey regarding preferences, and maybe you could share more about that.
Yeah.
Whitney.
I don't know if Whitney remembers the exact results from that, but I think it did show that there's there is demand for this type of program, and that people would benefit from free fares. I think that's kind of been a high priority from council, especially during the pandemic and the recession that resulted from that, to help people get out of the recession, to reduce costs such as transportation. So it was certainly some one of the top priorities for council, and something that we feel will benefit our users as well. And then the study that Evan mentioned as well did kind of look at the applications and tried to project the number of people who would use such a program. Specifically, if we looked at like a reduced fare program for low income riders, the kinds of people that would a number of people who would benefit from that. And we looked at programs like food stamps and other similar programs run by DCHS, and use that as kind of a litmus test to see how many people we thought might benefit from this. So we did kind of do some evaluation of what we thought the demand was, and that was a factor in the decision. That's a factor in how we implement it. But City Council, I think this was just a very big priority for them, especially post-pandemic.
Okay. So there is a slight chance that the need might be based on a temporary recessionary period and the pandemic, so bring back the riders, but the sustainability of that is going to be revealed as the program progresses. Is that kind of a safe assumption?
I think so. Yeah. Across the Commonwealth, different agencies have framed it in different ways, especially in some of the more mid-tier systems, like in Richmond, for example. They looked at the cost of fare collection versus what they were bringing in, and areas where the fare is lower than us. And I think a lot of people are just asking the basic policy question: is it worth the effort? Should transit be seen as a business type activity that should recover some of its own costs based on user fees, or should transit be looked at as really a utility, a public service that's provided to everyone? I think that was one of the policy questions in council's mind, and I know it's being asked around the country right now. The District of Columbia is looking at, I think, They've already piloted it with DC Circulator in the past. They're looking at continuing it. I know multiple DC council members are trying to institute, a policy within the district for Metro bus as well. So I think a lot of people are asking the question.
And one last, well, this might be for Michael on the planning side of things. Fare collection generates a lot of data that is used for, service planning and service delivery. Do you see any challenges there? Because now that's not going to be the case. There's going to be people counters and all that, but is that going to be effective for service planning and delivery purposes?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And yes, you're absolutely right that we do lose some of we are still able to track data either through manual tabulation by the driver hitting a button every time someone boards the bus, or as Evan mentioned, the automated counters that have kind of sensors above the doors. So we're still able to track basic ridership data, but what we lose with the fare box is some of the stratification of that data in terms of what type of pass product they're using, and things like that. So that's one of the challenges, one of the trade-offs. There are potentially some technologies that can help us with that that we might consider down the road. But I do agree that there is some loss of kind of the granularity of the data that we will still have plenty of ridership data, but just maybe not the granularity that we have right now.
And just to help you guys out a little bit, I work for the Federal Transit Administration, and I do have a large research program that involves payment, integration and payment systems of transit. And one of them is looking at this notion of fare-free transit. That's why I was asking those questions, actually for my own benefit, to collect some information. But I'll be happy to get in touch with you guys and put the research team in touch, because there are some answers that we might uncover during that research, and it will be very beneficial for you to kind of participate in that process as well.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that.
Okay.
If I could ask the question,
Please, Kellyanne, go ahead.
pivoting off something that Evan touched on, when curious about benchmarking, a lot of agencies across the country are instituting fare-free systems, or they're piloting those. What have you learned from looking at what else is going on in the US, and maybe have you done any international benchmarking through the International Bus Benchmarking Group?
I could probably jump in first, and Evan, you can add on. We first were looking at this fare free, and it looked like City Council might be going in that direction. We did kind of start to do some additional outreach to some other agencies within the country. We haven't talked to anyone overseas, but we talked to 3 different agencies, including DC Circulator, Asheville Transit, North Carolina, and one in Oregon, which it's escaping. Corvallis, there you go. So we did talk to those, and we've looked at a couple research papers as well that have kind of outlined some of the experience in terms of actually implementing these. So a lot of our discussions up to this point have been more policy based about, is this the direction we want to go to? But then, having a discussion about how you actually implement fare free is a different thing altogether. So focusing on things like customer service, like driver training, like, do you allow rear door boarding? Do you need to, update your customer code of conduct to be a little more restrictive? So we've been looking at all those things. I think overall, if you look at our board packet from I guess it was June, we had kind of a summary of what we found. I can just very briefly say that overall, it seemed like largely positive experiences with the agencies with ridership gains ranging from 20 to 50%. And just some kind of pointers and tips about how to handle difficult passengers and how to train operators and things like that. So yeah, we have a pretty good. We've talked to some agencies, and we feel like we have some good things to go off of for that.
Okay, to
Jason,
jump in
just-
really quickly, sorry, but and Jim, you can follow up, but I will send that portion of the board packet to you all in this group, along with the section that talks about the fare-free framework. So you won't have to digest the entire board packet. You can just specifically look at those pieces.
Thank you, Whitney. Jason has his hand up, and then Jim.
All right. Thank you so much. Jason Kinnick. I'll try and make it brief. I'm a AT34 rider for many years. On my average day, I'll be on WMATA, I'll be on the Metro, and I'll be on Dash anywhere from 2 to 4 times a day. I'm also an electric scooter. I'm a micro mobility person, 2,400 miles during COVID. So I get it. I use many hybrids of transportation in a day. So here's my thoughts and inputs on when it comes to free fare. It's not about necessarily about the money. I'm definitely concerned about the qualitative data and understanding, that's the output. When somebody steps on and off that bus, that's what we're really paying for at the end of the day. So I appreciate the conversation before that. I do have some concerns when it comes to actually this being a good deal for the community. When I say good deal, I mean taking care of needs and also ensuring that we're using our taxpayers in the most responsible way possible. And what I mean by that is if our studies were done pre-COVID, I would recommend other studies because there is a new reality post-COVID. I take the 3-4 because I'm going towards the Pentagon. I work in Crystal City. I am used to, over the last 4 years, a packed bus every single morning, standing room only. For the last, I've been riding, going to Crystal City for 13 months. I did not stay home. I was not remote. I was necessary. So I had to go in to the office every single day. So I have a really good view and picture of who's on the Dash bus every single day. There's about 2 to 3 of us on average every morning on the Dash bus. It used to be, 50, easily 40. Most of those people, almost all those people actually were riding free because the federal government subsidized their transportation. And many of you know that. So that's free ridership. Many of them are not coming back. The Pentagon, 10 to 20% will never come back. They've already pushed that policy out. So if we have a lot of modeling built on pre-COVID, it's not going to be accurate. If we have modeling built off of speculation of having prior ridership plus, they're going to be way, way off. So I would really institute some studies, and I'm also concerned about the lack of rigor in the need. If there is a study, if there's something that we'd be more willing to publish in a newspaper saying, here's the problem we're going to solve with the free fare, that's great. We should do that. But there's an awful lot of rigor in the solution, but I haven't heard a lot of rigor in the problem. So I have concerns about the data. I have concerns about, I appreciate that it's important to the board, but I'm the one that rides it every day, not them. Maybe they ride it every day. I'm the user, I'm paying. And I actually don't get subsidized, I actually pay it out of my own pocket. So I have concerns. I think studies should be reaccomplished that are post-COVID that take consideration of, hey, Pentagon's not going back to normal. Crystal City is not going back to what we would consider normal. There is a new normal. And many people are working remotely. So those aren't good solid numbers to base big decisions on, and I think they should be reaccomplished.
So
But I love Dash, by the way.
So Jason, before I move to Jim and then to Bonnie, I just want to make one comment here. Remember, your Dash, in a sense, is now having to sort of post hoc develop a rationale and data for a program that was implemented by the council unilaterally. Okay, let's be clear. I mean, yes, they were part of the discussions, but if you listen to the last few board meetings, the board made it very clear they understood that this was a political mandate being implemented here. So part of what's going to have to happen here is very clear, concise, unbiased data being presented, but ultimately it's going to be the politicians. It's not going to be the Dash staff who have to deal with this issue.
Oh, absolutely. And
Right.
what I'm saying is,
so we
if
need to
we're-
acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, again, I appreciate the thoughtful correction on that because, but at the end of the day, but that's what those are the thought-provoking questions we have to pull out of this because you are the experts, you are the transportation folks. The
Agreed.
data does essentially come from y'all. I mean, that's you're the ones that provide the amazing service, so you're the subject matter experts, and so I would lean on y'all when it comes to that. So, no, I appreciate that, and I understand that. But I do think that there should be an opportunity to take a look at the need and understand that a little bit more because it's about the output. It's not about the process. Over.
All right, so let me move to Jim and then to Bonnie.
Hey, 2 things. First, hopefully a very quick comment on the discussion Jason had. So prior to the city's study of this issue and prior to the council, at least I wasn't aware of council interest in this subject. I did some research on the reduced fare programs across the country, and there is evidence that says that free and reduced fare for low-income people it helps relieve an economic burden on disadvantaged communities, and that's documented, and I think that exists pre-COVID and will exist during our recovery from COVID, et cetera. So that aspect, I think, can be shown from pre-COVID transportation studies. What I learned is watching Dash go through this council imposed decision is that there are a lot of costs with implementing free or reduced fares for just low income. In addition to the fare box capital investment, there's human capital costs, staff being required to manage the program. And so there comes a point, and I don't know where it is, where there's so much cost involved in maintaining a fare system, you just make the extra leap. So I've sort of accepted that that's where we've ended up, largely as Ross pointed out, it was a political decision. Then my other real quick point, Martin alluded to what they learned and did a nice summary for the board, the ATC board, about the lessons. And as I think about that now, I know that evictions have been held in abeyance till 31 July. And so we're going to be in a perfect storm. There's going to be massive numbers of evictions take place in August, immediately prior to this 5 September rollout of free fare. And one of the issues that jurisdictions face is their homeless population deciding that buses were a good place to be. And then Martin alluded to, that's one of the lessons of how do you manage customers who no longer have to pay and just get on a bus, and that's where they live and sleep. And so I just, as a question, Martin, do you recognize this possible explosion in the homeless population, and therefore that may be a bigger problem than we would have thought about in the past?
Yeah, that's one of the key issues that I think any system going fare free is going to have to address. And it's a very delicate one, as you can expect, especially in a recession as we find ourselves. So we've been doing a lot of asking around. I think some of the key lessons are to make sure that you have a clearly defined code of conduct about, does a passenger have to have a destination when they get on? Are they allowed to do as many round trips as they want? Things like that. And so those are the types of discussions we're having internally. I think we're also, one of the lessons that we've heard is that you really need to have really good contacts with not just the police department, but also other mental health services within the city, particularly DCHS. So we're reaching out to some of the community service groups that even 24-hour hotlines for mental health that you can reach out to if there are incidents with any of the riders. So maybe we can avoid necessarily having to call APD if that's not absolutely necessary. So kind of just developing those policies, making sure the drivers are adequately trained on how to handle those situations and what's acceptable and what's not. And then also making sure that we're being respectful and mindful of other passengers in terms of how they're affected. So I think there's a lot. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah, and well, that's to say the city has a lot of resources to help people and find themselves in that situation. So hopefully, I don't know if that's possible. If there's any way you can connect those people to resources without distracting from your main job of moving people. But yeah, that's an important area. Just the perfect storm part's what's getting to me right now. But thank you very much. Appreciate you working through that.
Thank you.
Bonnie.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. What kinds of efforts are you doing to market not only the free fare, but all of the changes in the bus system that will happen on September 5th? I know that you've done some on the buses and lots of other things, and I'm wondering what you've done to take this information to people who may not be riding the bus right now.
So I can jump in here, Martin, for a second. Bonnie, I actually am going to talk about that just a little later in the agenda. So if you would just hold your question,
oh, sure.
Just for a little while. and then we'll talk more about that later. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. I just had one more comment. I ended up on the bus today and I wasn't planning to, and I'd forgotten to bring a mask. And so I was ready to get off the bus and the driver said, "Oh no, we have masks here," and handed me one. So I just really appreciate that effort on behalf of the Dash staff.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
Great to hear.
Are there any other questions either for Evan or for Martin on this topic of free fare? I'm sure we're going to come back and visit this more than once over the course of the next year or so.
Yes, this is Joyce Scott Rest. I just had to clarify. So you're talking about no one would pay to get on the bus, to ride the bus.
That's correct. Starting to September 5th, no one will pay to ride Dash.
Wow. Okay.
If I could ask one more question, if we're targeting low-income families alone, like how would we implement it? Like how would you show the proof that you're from a low-income family?
So we looked at this in the study that we commissioned, and the stand-in, we would need a partner like DCHS, Community Human Services, to help us with that. I believe we used SNAP or food stamp eligibility as the stand-in for that in the study. And so they would be issued probably, eligibility would be determined and then be issued like a smart trip card or something like that, that they would be able to board with that.
But just to clarify, that's not the option that we're going with. We're going for everyone's fare free, which has a lot of advantages because you get people that are just above the threshold. Maybe they make a little bit too much money for the SNAP program. And then it also reduces the barriers of having to apply for a program. You just show up in the bus, you could get on the bus instead of having to apply through DCHS and proving that you don't make the income level that's required. So.
If I can ask Evan one last question before we sign off on this topic, which is looking at the out years, right? Obviously, you're going to have an increase in costs, maintenance, other things that are related to the entire Dash system, right? Not just the buses per se. So do you project a revenue gap if we continue to go free fare and you don't maybe get all the grants that you project, and city council maybe just doesn't do anything vis-a-vis inflation, but just simply leaves you at the level of funding you are now? It seems to me then you're going to have a fairly large gap to make up in out years.
It's a very good question, of course. Our costs rise every year just to maintain the same level of service. And that's driven by our collective bargaining agreement more than anything else, as well as inflationary trends in parts and buses and all sorts of things like that. So we're very clear in the budget process what it costs to operate Dash, both at the current service level and if any service expansions are being considered. And if the city council were to say to us, or the city manager's office, this is the amount of money we can give you, we say to them, well, this is the amount of service that we can provide, with that. And of course, and that's an issue that was addressed by the board and the Fare Free framework was a prioritization of maintaining existing service, potentially over maintaining a Fare Free program, and that's explicitly something that would have to be weighed by the board. Should council not be able to fund both the increasing cost of just operating Dash and doing so without collecting fares. And we also included in that document that we would conduct as extensive public outreach as we could regarding that question, should we face that dilemma.
Good, that's what I wanted you to say to the group so they understood that you're already thinking about this issue. And just for the information of the group that may not know all the revenue streams, you continue to do bus charter and other elements for Dash where you will continue to collect revenue outside the fare box.
That's correct. So we have one major contract service, and that's with the Department of Defense for the Mark Center facility that provides a good amount of revenue. It's still only about 5% of our budget. The rest of our charters, less than 1%. So that's the biggest area of city funding. All the rest pretty much is subsidy that comes to us, and then our passenger revenue would go away. Just for everyone's awareness, the city and Dash are pursuing potentially be entering into a more direct relationship with the FTA, which is something the city has not done up until now. And that would, one of the provisions of that would mean the elimination of private charter service would not impact contracted service such as the Mark Center Express. That is open door, anyone can ride it, even though it's being paid for by a particular entity. But you know, we'd be out of the wedding charter business, but that's still not a major source of revenue for Dash.
Okay, thank you, Evan, very much. Appreciate the presentation. Also appreciate Martin's comments as well. Whitney, would you just introduce Gabriel again and the topic that's here for the benefit of the committee, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So again, Gabriel was kind enough to provide some insight about our digital sign displays earlier in the meeting, but now he's coming back to us to talk a little bit about destination signs for the new Dash network, as well as a comparative trip planner. So he's going to give a little more information about that. But this section of the meeting is really geared toward getting your feedback and having a discussion. So this is the point of the meeting where we really want you guys to unmute yourselves and give us your thoughts, because this is what we'll be using, or what is intended to be used on the front of the buses once the new Dash network launches. So Gabriel, I'll let you take it away.
Wonderful. And before I start sharing my screen, just a couple of notes. One, if you see me bend over like this, I'm just taking handwritten notes, so don't be concerned if you see the top of my head for a minute there. And then second, just as Whitney said, this is really an input session. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and see if I can get this right on the first try, because I have a couple different monitors here. And let's see, can everyone see? Awesome. Awesome. All right. So first note, Yvette, there wasn't a chat, so I put my email here really quickly in the PowerPoint. Gabriel.mori@alexandriava.gov.
Thank you.
Yes. And that's there for anyone else too, if you ever have issues with Dash Tracker. Of course, those do ultimately make their way to me through customer service, but feel free to drop me a line there too. So there are two things that I'm going to be going over today, and Whitney, just kind of give me a signal if I'm going over a bit. One is a proposal, I won't say the proposal, but a proposal for how our destination signs on buses could look under the new network configuration. And the second is this side-by-side trip planner tool that we're developing with a software developer. On both of them, we're looking for input from Dash riders for staff to consider as we're trying to determine what the best way to present where our buses are going is going to be. It's an issue of legibility. You want people to be able to understand your network, whether they're looking at a map or whether they're standing at King Street Metro trying to figure out what bus they need to take. So with that wind up to it, go ahead and, well, I kind of already went over some of this, but I love getting 30,000 foot views. So this is the just kind of brief overview of what we'll be talking about today. I'm going to start out with giving some pictures of the proposed signs and getting your feedback on them, asking some questions about them. And this is almost like a focus group light. I have a bit of structure to the order of the questions, and it would probably be best if we stick with that structure at first, and then we'll just have an open feedback session, just because there's some very specific things I'm looking for, and I don't want people's answers to bias other people's answers in them. Then we'll talk about kind of the philosophy behind the signs and the trade-offs between different sign design. Then we'll go into the side-by-side trip planner. That's a bit less structured. That's just, hey, here's one option, here's another. What do you guys think is better? So to start, this is a bit of an activity. I thought that this would be a good way to get initial impressions with no other information about the new network necessarily, except for the single bus line. So let's pretend that it's now past September 5th, and all of you folks here are trying to take line 30, which is basically the AT8 today, from Van Dorn Metro to the Dash facility right off of Duke Street. and you're standing at Van Doren, and all you know is that you need a line 30 to Braddock Metro. And I can go back to the slide if people need, but again, starting Van Doren, ending at Dash. Which bus would you take? And there is no chat. I put that in before I realized there wasn't a chat. So if you just want to write it down, and then I'll give folks a minute to think about it. I swear this is as easy as it sounds like. There's no trick. And then we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll start the discussion. Just give one more second. All right, let's go ahead. Anyone who wants to start, Russ, it looks like you have maybe want to kick
I
us
would
off.
just say option A, because I think it's very descriptive of the ultimate destination, along with the secondary pathway that the bus would run.
Right, that's really good. Which one would you take there if you're trying to get to Dash from Van Doren?
Probably the one that would be listed as the option C.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in?
So I really do want us to get feedback from everyone on the call if possible. So maybe let's do this. Let me run down the list as I see everyone.
I like that, Whitney.
As the participants, and you can just say A, B, or C. And then just really quickly, so everyone, just in case it's not quite visible enough for you, option A says the 35, Pentagon Metro via Yoakum/Beauregard. Option B says the 30, Braddock Metro via Whiting/Duke. And option C says 32, King Street Metro via Eisenhower. Murat, option A, B, or C?
B.
Bonnie?
I don't know, I'm sorry.
Okay. Jason?
C.
Jim?
B.
Kellyanne?
B.
Chris?
B.
Eric?
C.
Joy Scott?
C.
Ross? Oh, sorry, you already did yours. Sandy? Who's still muted? Okay. Yvette?
B.
Did I get everyone?
Oh,
everyone was kind of jumping. around.
this is Sandy. I was muted. C.
Thank you for doing that, Whitney.
No problem. Did I catch everyone? I think I did. Okay, perfect.
This is really good feedback because we have some work to do, I think, on our signs. The bus was actually B, Braddock Metro via Whiting/Duke Street. And this is getting a little bit into the philosophy behind the signs now, which I want to be careful of because I don't want to bias anyone's opinion of them. What we're trying to do is give both the ultimate destination of the bus and then also some of the information about where it goes along the way. So I'm going to move to the next slide. And this is for the line 35. This is basically the AT1 plus today, except it continues up to Pentagon Metro. And I'm going to open it up again. I know this is kind of a messy way to do this. I think it would be easier if we were in person, but we are limited by the technology we have. I know, Ross, you already said that you liked this design for how it gave kind of everything you needed there. What are other people's initial thoughts about it? What do you like about it specifically? And we'll get to what you don't like next.
Whitney, do you want to just go down the list again
Yes.
with this one?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
That's a good idea.
And just for everyone's clarity, so this head sign is line 35. So 35 is in large letters on the left side of the screen. The top line says Pentagon Metro. And the second line says via Yoakum/Beauregard. So we'll start. I'm not sure who is calling in on the 571 number. It doesn't have a name, so I'm not sure who that is.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, this is Sandy. I'm calling on the 571, even though I've got you on the screen. I'm MacGyvering this thing, so I'm the 571 number.
Gotcha. Any initial thoughts?
Well, it's good in the way if you know where Yoakum and Beauregard are. The final destination, obviously, but I suppose if you didn't know where those streets were, it might be, it wouldn't be of any value, but you have to put something up there. I understand that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Let's go, Jim.
Yeah, the route number is the largest. I think that's good. And the destination is readable. It's large enough to be readable in this photo anyway. The question is, what do I like about that sign and those two things? I'm not sure that how much extra value is added by taking up real estate on the via statement.
Thank you, Jim. Kellyanne?
I have to admit, I struggle with the second line of text. Just my eyes are not strong enough, even in person, to see that second line from a distance. So although I see it helpful, I can read it on the screen here and it's helpful on the screen. It's a sizing thing that I struggle with, and I'm not sure how much value that comment is to you, Gabriel.
A lot of value. All of this is gold.
Okay, Joy Scott?
I don't find any value in the second line at all. I'm good with the number and the destination.
So thank you.
Murat?
I do like the number and the destination being in all caps. And I also like the secondary routes in lower cases, so it kind of gives a hierarchy. But as far as what I don't like is that number 35 and 14 are confusing there because I don't know which one is which. And the colors of the yellows are interfering with the yellow lights on the bus. That might be confusing. And it's too crowded. So I don't know if you can extract enough value from the lowercase. I don't know if it's providing any benefit for being so crammed. And also, again, I think somebody else commented on that. If I don't know where Beauregard or Yoakum is, that might not benefit anything. Perhaps a landmark might be useful. Instead of routes or streets, just something that everybody knows. Even if it's, like Beauregard Home Depot or something like that, if possible. So those are my observations.
Thanks, Murat. Chris?
I definitely like that the destination and the number are pretty visible. I'd agree that the via part doesn't have as much benefit in my regard, as well as any individuals I would talk to. So I think that the via part is a little more unnecessary. I could see keeping it in the sense of if it does benefit some people, then it would be kind of a best of both worlds, but the via part wouldn't really serve much to me.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I like that the route number is,
first, reading it left to right. I actually like the via just in case, like the second line, just in case, you know, there's different routes serving the same destination, just different pathways. So I think that that can be kind of a good informational indicator for more of the casual rider. But yeah, I like it overall.
Thank you. Jason.
I think you might still be muted.
Jason is, yes, Jason, you're still muted if you're talking. Okay, we'll keep going. So the names are jumping around a little bit on me again. Joyce Scott, you already responded. Kellyanne, have you responded to this image yet?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I
Ross.
Not.
I'm sorry?
I have not. This is Bonnie.
Oh, please, Bonnie.
Okay, thank you. So what's really important to low vision people is to have the verbal announcement when the driver opens the door. So I'll say that because that helps everybody. I would also put as little information on the bus signage as possible. So I would go for 35, whatever it said, Pentagon City. And then the third thing I would say is that in studies that have been done for people with vision impairments, yellow on black tends to be pretty good. And I would also put the same sign on the side of the bus because you can, as a vision impaired person, you can walk up to that sign and you don't have to try to see it as the bus is approaching.
Yes, and I should mention, this is just a picture of the front of a bus, but we do have side destination signs on all of our buses as well.
Yeah, so I would say just the destination would be good. I don't think anybody with low vision could read what's underneath the destination anyway.
Got it. Thank you.
Ross?
I echo Bonnie's comments. I was very concerned about what the ADA compliance issues are related to signage. So I think that's something that I think she spoke to elegantly. And I think the idea that there is some audio associated with it would in fact be very useful. The other thing that I wonder about is, even though the majority of the riders are obviously going to be people that are Alexandria citizens, you're going to have in tourist season a lot of people who are just trying to figure out the system, right? They get here, they see a bus, they're confused. Do I go to King Street Metro to get downtown? Do I go to Pentagon Metro? So I do think in the kind of larger sense of mapping, you need to think about what is the casual tourist going to think about this, as opposed to those of us in the city who know where we're going and know most of the streets. That's my comment.
Thanks, Ross. And Yvette?
Yeah, I really like the font of the 35. I think I really like the 3 and the 5. I mean, instead of the robotic, like the grid look. Yeah, so I like that. Yeah, I like the fact that it's taking up all the possible space, the number, so that's good. I wouldn't mind the via the 2 streets personally, because there are 3 points and it shows you the destination, so I know roughly what the route is. Yeah, and then it tells you what the potential landmark or touristy places is throughout the route. So I'm personally okay with it. Also, I do wonder if there's a way to incorporate eastbound, westbound, information there, or on the side.
It's something we've been talking about quite a bit, actually, because historically we've only had the east, west, north, south on the back signs. And
Yeah.
it's been kind of weird that, okay, so that's not referenced anywhere else on the bus. So it's something we've kind of played around with a bit. Is, does it make sense to put that on the front? Does it make sense to not do it at all? So it's interesting to hear. For those of you who don't like the vias, if I could ask a question, I apologize, I don't have a mock-up of this yet. But if you had the vias on a different rotation of the sign, so that, one sign, you'd first see 35 Pentagon Metro, and that would be the sign, and then it would flip to another sign that said 35 via Yoakum Beauregard. Do you think that would help? Or do you think that might just be more confusing because then you've lost the destination? No, I see Ross shaking his head.
I don't know.
I think this,
More confusing.
yeah, I think the exercise should be,
It looks like Chris put an X, so I'm guessing that means no, no as well.
I can only see a
didn't want to
small
interrupt
number.
anybody else.
simplicity, I think, is the issue.
So I'm going to skip this one because we already talked about not likes, and talk about a bit of the philosophy for that mock-up there. And you guys have really touched on all of this already in your answers. So we did that mock-up with the philosophy that we wanted to show destinations and vias to give riders an understanding of not just where the bus will end up, but also some of the places it touches upon on the way. I always actually think of the AT8 when I think of this, that we call it AT8 Braddock Metro via Old Town, but it spends most of its time on Duke Street. And that's might just be my own bias as a rider, as a transit user, that I always wanted to see, well, I want to know all the places I can get to, not just the final stop. But there's a trade-off with, taking that valuable real estate on the front of the sign and dedicating it to something else besides just the direction. Then within the vias themselves, we kind of chose to try to do roads over places. So knowing that it might use all of Beauregard instead of just one place, we thought may be more useful. And again, keep in mind, there's no right or wrong for any of this. We could be horribly off the mark for what riders would actually find useful. I did some market research before I did these mock-ups and watched a lot of YouTube videos of other transit agencies to try to see what their signs were and, compare them to their maps and their Google, transit feeds to see what it looked like. And everyone does it a little bit differently. There's unfortunately, no real good industry standard. We did decide to try to keep that destination on the front all the time, which is why you get this double stacked sign, so that if you have any rotations in there, that destination is always there. And then we wanted to try to drop the vias as you pass them. So when the bus gets past, in this example, I'll go back again, when it gets past Yoakum Parkway, the sign would change to just be 35 Pentagon Metro via Beauregard, which is to try to avoid some of the confusion that some of our current signs cause, particularly the AT5 on weekends, where it says, AT5 Eisenhower via, I think, Van Dorn. And then it continues to say Eisenhower via Van Dorn, even as it's going down Eisenhower away from Van Dorn Street. But again, there's no right or wrong answers for any of this. That's just the philosophy we happen to use to make these signs. So, the trade-offs that you guys already all mentioned were font size versus amount of information, complexity versus simplicity, and then also complexity versus simplicity for technology. So if we're trying to change destination signs mid-route to drop off waypoints like Beauregard Street or Yoakum Parkway, what happens if a bus doesn't change its sign properly, if the technology fails? And then you have, the old problem that we have on the AT5 today. This has been really, really useful feedback from everyone. But before I move on to the side-by-side trip planner, are there any kind of final thoughts, questions?
I think Jim has his hand up.
Okay, sorry, I can't see that.
Yeah, Gabriel, okay. Gabriel, if you just go back one slide on your trade-offs. The roads over places, I guess, would be my first comment. And so as I understand the routes that will go into effect on the 5th of September, we are asking, riders to accept that they're going to transfer more often than they do today. And they're going to transfer typically at transit centers, March Center, Landmark Mall. So I withdraw my objection, if you will, to the VIA. I think a good exception would be a major transit interface place, because their destination may not be the final destination, but it may be the transit. So I think having the place would make sense in some of those cases. The second comment on roads, and here's an exception, and I don't know if this makes sense either. We do have, and I apologize for getting the new numbering system, but we have the bus that's going to alternate between North Van Dorn and then 15 minutes later, North Early. And so, let's call that the 10 bus, whatever the number is. It's 10A or 10B or something. Well, I may forget the A or B, but if you gave me the name of the street, then I know which one I'm getting on. So the exception I would make for street names for SVs would be where a particular route has an alternating option. And those are particular comments to what we're implementing on the 5th of September. So I just, not to complicate your life, but to give you those exceptions to a general rule of finding
not complicating at all. This is exactly why we're talking about this. And thank you so much for that. Any other hands up, Whitney?
It doesn't look like it.
All right, well, feel free to interrupt me whenever then. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. I kind of had this queued up, but I don't think we need to do that. That was just to show how the VIAs would drop off as it gets throughout its route, but I'm looking at the time and I don't think we have time for that. If anybody does want to see that, I'm happy to bring that up later. Okay, so the side-by-side trip planner. So we are working with a software developer to create a trip planner online that can, take your origin and destination and show what route you should take in the new network, as well as what route you're taking right now in the old network. There are a couple different options for how we can present this information though, and that's more what I want to focus on today. What you're seeing right now is option A, which is just a screenshot of a mock-up of it. So this isn't even a live version. In fact, if you go to the site right now, which is a private site, because it's still in development, no matter what origin and destination you put in, it spits out the same result because it's just the mock-up version of it. What was that? Oh, it just froze? Oh, do you need help? Just keep going, okay. Sorry about that. It seems like we're having some technical troubles on Whitney's computer perhaps, but I'll keep going ahead with this and I think they're going to be able to get it resolved. So the first option that we have here is that the routes are shown by frequency. And what I mean by that, if you see this key up in the top left-hand corner, it kind of breaks down what the different line colors mean. So some lines are going to be shown as being 15 minutes or more frequent. And I apologize if this is a little bit small. And those are, the big thick red lines there. And then other lines, if they're purple, they're going to, be coming every 20 minutes. Lines that are kind of that blue color, aqua blue, are every 30. And then that light blue every 60 minutes. And so as a user, if you're just looking at this and you want to know, am I on a new frequent route or am I on an infrequent route? Basically, do I have to look up the schedule before I go to my bus, or can I just walk out the door and expect that something's going to be there? This is a really good system overview to be able to see that information and to also be able to see on like any static map, if we use the same key legend for that, where the routes are denoted by frequency, you can get a quick overview of the city of Alexandria and see where all the frequent, bus routes might go. On this particular example from the side-by-side trip planner mockup, the red line there are 2 new network routes that black dot is a transfer center. And then the thin blue line down on Seminary Road there is the current AT2. So they show the new network by using a thick line and the old network, the current dash network, by using a thinner line. The alternative that we could do is that we could have each route show a unique color, which is what we do today on all of our trip planners. You know, if you go to Google Maps today and, you know, search for a dash route, each route is going to have its own color code. And if you go to our, you know, like ride guide, each route has its own, you know, color associated with it in there. And that doesn't tell you the frequency of the route. It's a little bit harder to get that overview, but it makes it easier to tell specific routes apart when you're, you know, looking at a kind of spaghetti mess where a bunch of routes come together. Just like the option A, this trip planner would still also show new network with thicker lines and old network with smaller lines. And we'd still show where the transfer station location is for the trip. And I've touched on this some. This is just kind of taking a step back, looking from outside of just this trip planner to just presenting transit information overall. You know, the pro of a frequency-based map like this one, this is what we used in the Alexandria Transit Vision planning. And this is actually the one on the new network website right now. I just pulled it from there for the PowerPoint. Is that, again, you can quickly see where this high frequency grid across the city of Alexandria is by looking for the red lines. Hard thing is that when you get up to, you know, Southern Towers, Early Street, Minokan, it can get a little tricky to tell where the lines actually go. You know, contrast that, this is from a planning tool that we use called Remix. This is still the new network, but each line here has its own color. So it might be a little bit easier to tell what specifically is the 36A versus the 36B, but you don't immediately see where the most frequent bus lines are located. And I don't know if Whitney is back up online yet. I'm going to attempt to do kind of a roll through like she did to get everyone's feedback. I apologize in advance if I miss anyone because I don't have access to the participant list quite like she does, but let me see if I can get this. All right, I'm just going to go in the order that people appear on my screen. Yvette, what are your thoughts? Do you prefer showing by color of route or showing by the frequency of the route?
Question, no, I do wonder. I mean, I wouldn't mind just showing by the color of the route just to sync with standard use the standard system. And then, yeah, I don't know, because chances are you're searching one route at a time, right? So yeah, I think this will be a more simplistic way for me to look at. And it shows all the transfers like dash to dash or dash to Metrobus, right?
Yes, yes, this
Okay.
will have Dash, Arlington, Fairfax, VRE, and possibly even PRTC, Montgomery, et cetera. It's pretty easy to add in those other agencies.
Yeah, I like the color coded one.
Okay. Ross?
My only comment is for those of us who are colorblind, the colors become an issue.
What would make it easier to tell them apart? Like, is there I'm thinking maybe like line thickness or something like that.
I think the line thickness might be one way to look at it, yes.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, I like the color coded, and the reason being is again, you know, anything that resembles the you know, the Metro, you know, it's easy to use, and I'm used to seeing it, and it's pretty straightforward. I actually had a boss when it came to color coded slides, and when I color coded them, I put the first letter of the color behind it, and it actually worked out quite well. Because that was a pretty crazy challenge actually. But yes, so anything that's, you know, close to mimicking Metro, I'm all in favor of, because it just makes it easier for, especially if you're from out of town. The more of those two are similar, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
I go with the color code. One additional advantage is that it really shows you where the transfer point is in case you don't see the black dot right away.
It's a really good point. All right, it jumped around just a little bit. Bonnie?
Thank you. I can't comment on which graphic is better. I would say that there needs to be a text way to present the information. I use the dash tracker a lot, and I'm wondering if you can enhance that so that you can use it like you can the Metro system online. I can say I need to go from here to there, and it will give me text information, you know, take the yellow line to Gallery Place, transfer to blah, blah, blah. So I would suggest something like that for people who can't see the graphics.
Yes, and I should mention that it will have, like over here, this is still a screenshot from the mock-up, so it's still going to give a basic like text walk to this point, and then, you know, wait this amount of minutes and then take this route to this location. So we should have that in it as well.
Yeah, please test it for accessibility for people who use screen readers.
We put that in as a requirement for the contractor, that
Okay.
they have to meet that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
happy
you.
to do anything I can to help.
That's really good to know, because we I don't think we have anyone on staff who uses a screen reader, and it's, I know, something I want to, you know, always make sure that we're improving our accessibility to.
Thank you.
All right. Martin is next, and he doesn't comment. So Murat?
I have a similar comment like Ross. If you are colorblind, it's going to be very difficult to distinguish the lines. Thickness is a solution, or the types of lines that we use in graphs, like, you know, dashed versus, you know, and quite honestly, for frequency, it might be beneficial. Like the closer the dashes are, the more frequent it is, maybe. And my, you know, traditional engineering training always told me, if you print something in black and white, can you distinguish the lines and all that? In this case, nobody prints anything anymore, I guess. But you know, it would be impossible to figure out, you know, which one is which. But you know, thickness or symbols, or you know, the line types might be one. And the other thing is, it's more like a question about the. Maybe I missed the part that you were talking about. What is the value of showing the new route versus the old route? Because, I mean, if it's a service route, then it doesn't make a difference, right?
So yeah, so I should clarify that this is specifically for leading up to the network implementation. So this is kind of a short-term tool that we'll have up in the month before, and then a couple months after. Just so as people are getting used to it, you know, hey, I used to take the AT5 to the AT8. What are the new routes that I should be looking for?
Okay. So this is kind of for the novelty period, right? Like when people are getting used. Okay, I got it.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, those are my my only comments as far as the color choices. Unfortunately, because of the Google Maps, you know, standard colors, the oranges and reds, they get all mixed up. So you know, I'm looking at it right now on my phone because I lost my Wi-Fi connection. All I see is like the interstates and the major routes, and certain, you know, bus routes are the same color. It's very difficult to distinguish between them. So maybe those symbols might be helpful, or line type might be helpful to give them a pop.
Got it. So it just doesn't all look like extensions of 395.
Yeah, it's, I mean, obviously, you know, when you're on your phone and you're looking at it, you can zoom in and see all that stuff. But the first look is very confusing. But it's, you know, it is Google. It's colors, so that's what it is.
Hey, Gabriel, do you mind if I just jump in? This is
Please
Martin.
do.
just to ask a quick clarifying question on the color blind issue. So just to make sure that we're understanding correctly. So for those that are colorblind, is it my understanding that the route frequency table that is shown in the top right, that is that it's hard to tell the distinction between those colors? Or is the issue more that if we have like 10 different routes with 10 different colors, there's going to be some routes that are very similar, orange and reds, that might be similar to one another? So I guess if you could clarify for that issue, which is the better of the two options, having like basically 5 different shades or 10 different shades, one for every route.
Russ, Russ sounded like you might actually have it. Russ, I don't want to jump into it. If you do, maybe you can clarify it more. But my experience has been that the colors orange and green and that dark yellow, like mustard color, get all mixed up in there. And there's some research that we've done to develop navigation tools for people with vision impairments or blind, not blind people, with vision impairments. And that was the feedback that we had received in the back. But I don't know if there are any different types of color blindness.
No, I second the comment that you make.
So it's not the variety of colors, but it's the choice of certain colors that mustard. Yeah.
So we could do either one basically, as long as we don't have colors that are kind of that orange, red, earthy tone.
Right.
Yeah. But then there's not too many colors left.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Just going to take
Okay, in the interest of time, we need to move this along because we still have another agenda item after this. Is the 2 more agenda items after this. So where are you on your list now? How many more do we have to go?
I think just 3 more.
Okay.
Joy, Chris, and Eric, I believe. Sorry.
My first name is Joy Scott.
Joy Scott, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Color.
Okay. Chris?
Color as well.
And Eric?
Color for me too.
And
do we still have Sandy on the line? On audio?
Sandy had to drop off because he was catching his flight.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you all so much for your time. That's all I have for this. Really appreciate. I know I went over a little bit, so I'll stop screen sharing now and let you guys get back onto the next meeting, meeting agenda.
Very helpful, Gabriel. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks, Gabe.
Okay, now we're at Whitney, New Dash Network Outreach, and we come back to Bonnie's question.
Yes, and luckily I was able to rejoin with no problem, so I hope that I don't freeze again. So let me just share my screen. In the interest of time, I did try to keep this as brief as possible. Let's see. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we talked to you last meeting about, Martin talked to you last meeting actually about the new Dash network and what the network actually looked like, how it would function. And so what I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about is the actual outreach that we are going to be implementing for the new Dash network. Just a few key bullet points before we get started. The launch date is September 5th of this year. It provides access to high frequency service on several routes, provides service 7 days a week, serves 50,000 additional residents and nearly 25,000 additional jobs, and provides 73% of low-income residents and 70% of minority residents access to frequent all-day service. So those are kind of the key factors of this network. All right, so I'll start off with the digital. So we are planning to provide information as well as graphics on a number of different digital platforms, including all of our social media platforms, which are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We're in the process of beginning to create an actual video for the New Dash Network, so that will be on our YouTube channel. And then we're also going to use LinkedIn next door, which has become very popular within the Alexandria community. And then we also have a New Dash Network page on our website, which is dashbus.com/new network, that has a lot of information about the new network on it. And then lastly, we are creating a new website, but I'll come back and talk to that a little bit more later in the presentation, because that is actually kind of twofold. Any questions on digital before I keep moving? Okay. So then there are also several e-newsletters around the city that we will be providing information in, including Alex News. There's Alexandria e-News as well. Civic and neighborhood associations. We have a pretty substantial list of civic and neighborhood associations from various outreach that we've done for back when this was called the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan. We did several rounds of outreach, and we have a database that we use for that we'll also be using for this to provide New Dash Network information. FYI Alexandria, as well as Go Alex. Then we're also going to do some digital advertising in several of the local publications, including Alex Now, Alexandria Gazette, Alexandria Living, The Times, and then also WTOP, which obviously is a radio station, but they also have a digital arm that we'll use to promote the new network. And then several of the same publications will actually do print advertising in, as well as additionally El Tiempo, which is a Hispanic publication, and then Zebra Press, which is another local publication. There are also several partnerships that we've developed and also already had previously to support and get the word out about the new network. We're in communication with the Chamber of Commerce, AEDP, or the Economic Development Partnership, the Small Business Development Center. Will actually be presenting with them, Visit Alexandria, and then Volunteer Alexandria, which I'll go into a little bit more about Volunteer Alexandria in just a minute. Oh, sorry, a little too far. Actually, I'll go into Volunteer Alexandria now. So I didn't include this on the slides because it just wasn't enough information to provide, but we're also recruiting street team members so that we can do pop-up events in various locations around the city, especially where there's going to be a lot of change happening. So we'll have ambassadors that we'll bring onto the team to help coordinate the volunteers that we received through Volunteer Alexandria, who has graciously decided to help us with this venture as well. So I don't have a number for you yet. We're still in the process of getting all of that information, but I do know that we are going to be working with them to have volunteers so that we can hopefully have as many people on the street providing New Dash Network information as possible. That includes actual line information. So specific lines, we'll be able to provide information along those routes, as well as general New Dash Network information. So there will be a street team component and pop-up event component to these digital and print outreach options as well. Does anyone have a question? Okay. And so that's very brief. 'Cause I know we're over time, so I'm trying to keep us from not going over too much. But that in a nutshell are kind of the arms that we have for the New Dash Network outreach.
May I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Are you also going to try to get some, like the Washington TV stations, to try to get a spot with, place, Martin or somebody in front of them and get a couple stories?
Yes. So media outreach is part of the plan as well. I'll be trying to reach out to get stories done. I'll also be sending press releases. So yes, media outreach is also a component.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. And then, so there was also a question about returning to transit and what those efforts are and what that looks like for us. So I will let you all know that there is actually a regional coordination that's happening with DRPT, Department of Rail and Public Transportation. They are reaching out to regional jurisdictions. We've actually had a couple of calls so far, I believe, so far, to work on a regional return to transit campaign, to make sure that we are all on one accord, we're all sharing the same message, to encourage people to return to transit. So that is in the works. And from what I understand, the plan is for that coordinated effort to kick off in September as well, which actually works well because our focus up until September will obviously be the New Dash Network. And then once we are able to launch the New Dash Network, hopefully we'll be able to roll right into encouraging the return to transit through this coordinated effort. I will say that we haven't actually agreed on what the campaign will be yet. That has been the first two calls. We kind of discussed different options for the campaign. So hopefully within the next month, that'll be narrowed down, and then we'll be able to move forward. And then last but not least, for return to transit, part of how we plan to encourage people to return to Dash specifically is by making our website more user-friendly and more inviting. Right now, I think our website could use some improvement, and so that's what we plan to do. This project is actually underway right now. This is a mock-up of what the new homepage could look like when we're finished. And it will have many more tools available on the website for riders. Hopefully everything will be much easier to find. It'll be easier to navigate. And the headings will make it easier so that everything's not under one section. So you're not scrolling for a very long time to find information, or everything's not kind of lumped under about us. You'll be able to find things a little easier. So that's kind of the reason why we wanted to try and implement this right along with the new network and the push to return to transit. So we're planning to actually launch this new network in mid to late August, so that it'll actually be available for riders prior to the launch of the new network. So hopefully they'll be able to find the route maps a little easier, be able to plan a trip a little easier, and get all of those resource tools that they'll need to encourage them to return to transit. So a lot going on right now, but that's all I have. I tried to make it as quick as possible because I knew that we were going to be over time today. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them now, or if you think of any later and you want to shoot me a quick email, I'm happy to do that too.
Thank you, Whitney. I know that Jim had one question that I know he sent me in an email at the time we were developing the agenda, which was health-related issues. Jim, do you have that you want to ask your question more specifically?
Well, I just, I don't recall the question, but it was probably along the lines of, our case counts are pretty low, and Dash has just done a fabulous job of addressing health issues on the buses. And I think the question was, to what degree is talking about the safety and the health safety is going to be part of the communications plan? Because I think it's and again, I don't know if everybody in the region thinks that's, if you're coordinating with DPRT, that may not resonate to the top for everybody in the region, but I sure think that's an important and super important message for Dash, because I think you've done a fabulous job.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, until we hear otherwise, we're continuing with the safety precautions that we've had in place since COVID began. We're still requiring masks. Everything we put out still says that we're requiring masks. I don't know what's going to happen in September. It sounds like some of the regulations may be changing in September. So I will adjust accordingly, but for now, everything we're putting out is still saying that we're still sticking to the same regulations that we have been.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross.
Other questions?
Yeah. This is Joy Scott. Whitney, can you please speak out what DASH stands for? I've been told many things since I came on here. I want to know definitively what DASH stands for.
So when the moniker first came to be, it stood for Driving Alexandria Safely Home.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yes. So we don't really use that as much these days. It kind of has a life of its own now.
Right. Okay.
But that is originally what it stood for.
Okay, that's what I. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And quickly, Whitney, this is not a question, but it's a comment. Would you mind putting me in touch with Chris and Martin? I think like you can share my information with them if they need to get in touch with me regarding the any of the research that we do there. So I'll keep them in the loop. And I don't know if you have my professional email, but I'll send it to you.
Yes, please. So just send me the information that you'd like to send to Martin, and I'll just forward it right to him.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions of Whitney?
Okay. And again, if you think of any other questions regarding outreach or any of the other presentations that we've heard this evening, don't hesitate to send me an email. I will forward it to whoever it needs to be forwarded to and get you all an answer.
Did you mention what you were doing for the languages in Alexandria? I may have missed that.
Sure. So we do translate into Spanish and Amharic. So we'll have materials available in Spanish and Amharic. The website, the web page that currently exists on our website is also translated in Spanish and Amharic as well.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item on our agenda listed under new business is election of officers. As you know from the charter that Whitney sent you at the time or I guess shortly after our last meeting, the charter for this committee calls for a chair and vice chair. Whitney solicited nominations from the group several times over the course of the last several months, and I believe she has received 0 nominations. Is that correct? I stepped in at the last meeting, just volunteered to be the interim chair, but we do need a permanent chair and a vice chair. So does anybody want to nominate a chair or vice chair?
This is Jim, and I'll be happy to nominate Ross as chair.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I abstain.
Congratulations, Ross.
All right, well, thank you. Does anyone wish to volunteer for the vice chair position? Otherwise, I will reach out after this meeting and try to draft one of you into
I mean,
the
if there are no
role.
takers, this is Murat. I'll fill that position because it is important. So Russ, there's no need for you to undertake everything. So if there's anything I can help, I can do that. If everybody agrees, obviously.
Do I have a formal nomination of Murat?
I'll nominate Murat as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, congratulations, Murat.
Okay. We're in this together.
All right, Whitney, thank you for organizing such a useful and informative meeting. Appreciate it very much. Our next meeting, would you just remind us of the date of our next meeting again, please?
Yes, give me just one moment. The next meeting will be held at 5:30 p.m. on October the 6th.
And God willing, we might be able to do that in person, depending on health conditions at that point.
Hopefully in person. Oh, before we do break, I would like to mention, sorry, one of the other components for the New Dash Network outreach. I would like to solicit you all's assistance as part of the street team that we're going to be forming to help inform our riders about the New Dash Network. You hopefully, when things kind of return to a little more like normal, we'll have more in-person outreach opportunities for you all to participate in. But for this year, it seems like this may be one of the few opportunities that we'll have to get you guys involved in in-person outreach opportunities. So if anyone is interested in participating, please send me an email.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for participating in this meeting tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in October. In the meantime, any suggestions for draft agenda items for our meeting in October will be greatly appreciated, and you will get a reminder email from us at various points during the summer. But otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the summer and an early fall, and we look forward to seeing you on a Dash bus soon.
Great. This is Joyce. Scott. I have one suggestion, perhaps a group contact list. I'd be willing to provide my information. So
There is one, Joyce Scott. We will update it with you and Yvette's
okay, great.
contact information and get that out to you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Good
Good night,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Summer.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Toodles.